All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out this evening. So let's talk about education, our students, our schools, our future. My name is Frank Baker, I'm the Director of E-Marketing and Managing Director of E-Town Magazine, and also another publication I think a lot of people see in the backpacks of your kids, E-Kids Magazine. We're very honored to have the chance to work with the Enid Public School System. And we're that out twice a year. It's really given us a chance to go to the schools and find out what some good work is being done. We've got several aspects of the presentation tonight. Here in just a few minutes, I'll be introducing Henry Sparks, who will do an overview presentation, and then we'll have our panelists within the Enid Public School System share a few minutes. But the key thing we've got to review at the end of this is your questions. And we're handing out cards as you came in to push questions on. I'll come down the microphone in the audience and we'll chit-chat back and forth with the national. But if you haven't got your cards filled out yet, go ahead and pull it up in your hands and enter this bill to, I promise, no collection credit will be passed. Also wants good card. So if you were to leave a card or recommend a question, we'll look at the weekends. We're talking about the broader brush strokes of education side. If you have something specific that deals with a student, teacher, school, please put that on the card and your telephone number, and then they take that with all seriousness and will certainly be addressed by staff and administration just as quickly as possible. So first of all, we have a presentation that will begin the evening. It will impact on our schools and presenting it. I guess Henry Sparks is a 20-year teaching veteran, a national board certified teacher who teaches 7th and 8th grade math at Stafford Middle School in Illinois City. She holds a bachelor's degree in early childhood education and a master's degree in elementary education from Oklahoma City University. In 2007, she was awarded the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. In 2008, she was named the Oklahoma City Public School Teacher of the Year, and will be honored as the 2009 Oklahoma Teacher of the Year. Currently, she serves as co-chair for the Education Action Team of Boys. Let's please give a warm welcome to Henry Sparks.
Thank you all so much. It's great to be back in Enid. Over my years, I definitely have enjoyed my time. I don't have to turn back. I live in Enid. I teach in the city of Holtzen. To be back in Enid. It's great now. Anyone have a lot to be proud of, especially for the education system. Great things going on. I'm blessed to be here tonight when you have no voice. And voice is an acronym for Voices, Organized, and Civic Engagement. And it's a group, a coalition of nonprofits, church congregations, schools, unions, in the local area who have come together for the last 2 years. Our issues really is things going on in patients and how we can improve local health. And one of the violations that we have to work on is education. And so I have been co-chair of the education team. And we put together this presentation after about 10 months of listening to it over the last spring, where we visited schools across the Illinois City Metro, and we talked to families, parents, children, students, teachers, administrators, and we listened to what they were saying about their schools. Because they have lots of great ideas about what free schools are, but they feel like they weren't really getting the support that they needed to help their schools compete those records. And so, out of that came a lot of concern, especially this fall, when the new grading system came in. More and more families were concerned that their children were attending lower grade schools, if you will. And so we decided to put together this presentation with the additional goal of gathering from people like you all across the state ideas about what really makes a great school. Because unfortunately, Oklahoma's data system right now is based solely on test scores. And so we're going to talk in this presentation about what might not be so great about that, what we can do differently, what we can really look at in schools, and what really matters to families about what makes a great school. So this presentation gives you a lot of background with it. It's about 45 minutes. I'm going to actually read the script, which those who know me, I'm not used to doing that, so I'm going to come forward with me, but I'm going to do my best just to get it right. And then we can take questions. Right? And I've got some colors around here that help me with the slideshows and some door rust. So we probably know the headlines. See the name of them. And they're going to come to a minute. So significant amount of schools receive these notice. School leaders are frustrated over the data results. School report cards cause sharp global reactions. Right? That probably happens to you in Twitter, you've heard about the reactions. And this is not unusual. There's been a lot of reaction back and forth between educators and public officials. Researchers on both sides have been weighing in, and you could get lost trying to follow the arguments. But what is getting lost is that the AAS system for schools is supposed to give parents and community members a better understanding of the quality of education happening within a school. And it's supposed to give educators the tools they need to improve schools. But we don't think that is happening under the current AAS system. And this presentation is a look at why. We either need to improve the current AAS system or get some other system that holds schools accountable and yet still gives parents and the community a fair way to assess the quality of schools. This presentation is part of our effort to ask parents, educators, and leaders what makes a school and share with the candidates for state superintendent of education what local opponents would like to see in their school programs. So where does the AAS system come from? I'm going to give you a little bit of background because it actually goes back several decades and a lot of people don't know this history. So I think it's really interesting, especially for teachers in the group that may not be aware of this history. So anyone in the audience who knows who Sandy Cress is? Oh, you do know Sandy Cress. So those who don't know Sandy Cress, most of you do not. Sandy Cress is actually started out as a chair of the Democratic Party in Dallas County in Texas. And this was almost 3 decades ago. He became interested in education and concerned when the business community would not support passage of a bond in public schools. So he came up with an idea. What if he could demonstrate to the business community that public schools were showing progress when they didn't support the bond? So this is the beginning of testing in schools, school accountability, which is quite different than the testing that was occurring, which is individual assessment of progress of students. So to promote his ideas of reform, he ran for and got elected to the school in Dallas County. And under his tenure, there was a lot of tension. Not a very fun place to be. One of the members of the business community at the time was George Rush, who actually at the time owned the Rangers. Well, the two became fast friends. They forged some great relationships, and by the time George Rush was for governor of Texas, he made Cress his education advisor. So Cress had crafted this idea about, let's get tests, we'll test the schools, this will tell the business community that the schools are making progress, and then improve and improve. And then they decided to take, once George Rush was governor, they took it statewide, and those first tests were called the TOS test. And you remember the controversy around the TOS test. Well, that was the first testing of schools to happen in the nation that happened in Texas. We have all of course, what happens a few years later. By that time, when we had President Bush, Cress was governor of a law firm who was working for McGraw-Hill. And guess what? The state of Texas needed someone who produced and graded thousands of tests under TOS for this new program. And guess who got it? McGraw-Hill. So it's not like you can involve more money here. So Bush then, when he became president, he took Cress along with him, and together they created and got passed with strong bipartisan support our favorite law, which I'm not going to. So what is the testing year now? Because we have not much of that one has been in place since 1990, and this is an overview, so I'm going to walk you through it. New Title I was passed originally in 2001, and it created an annual testing system for all students grades 3 through 8, plus one test in high school. And it also said that by 2014, this year, that 100% of American students will be able to pass the reading math test in every grade. This law was going to make that happen over the decade. So we're now in 2014, and we know what has happened. So how did that play out? Well, these 5 testing companies far. In fact, $1.7 billion annually is spent. And if you take into consideration the additional materials that come with training for teachers, tutoring, and that kind of thing, the estimates are up to $5.3 billion annually. So we have plenty of work, right? Press has been amazingly a lobbyist for 3 of the 5 companies. So every time he's involved, we manage to get money from everything. So the Rockville, Peterson, Press has been a lobbyist. In fact, when they owned Penguin Woods, Peterson was originally very small. But when Press became a lobbyist, they moved to the 3rd largest testing company in the country. And then ETS, the publisher of the SAT, after Press became their lobbyist, they quickly got the testing contracts in California, New Jersey, and Indiana. We also have reading first, which is what our government which are left behind. So not only do we have annual testing that's bringing in billions of dollars to these companies, reading first was part of the provision of the child left behind. The Title I schools would receive funding for a scientifically based reading research or for hiring reading coaches in schools. States had to apply for funds, and those funds or those applications went for a federal panel of experts. But many of these experts happen to be authors of the only approved reading research programs that can be used. So it's a fact thing. Unfortunately, that over time, people figured out what was going on, and that was pretty unethical. And so now we reverse the funding we have. Some of the education services, another outcropping that we show left behind. Schools who don't perform well, if they fail to make adequate progress and really their child left behind, they're offered the opportunity to either go to a more successful school or to get average school tutoring. Most of the tutoring programs are from for-profit companies like Kaplan or Cooley, and guess who's the lobbyist? You guessed it, Press. So the demand is not unlimited, obviously. The bottom line is educational management organizations there at the bottom. What happens to a school that's not performing after 5 years is it's reorganized. So reorganized under a charter depending on the state laws, many of which are for-profit charters. So as states have gotten closer and closer to that 2014 deadline and recognize that 100% of their students are never going to pass the test, they decided to do some negotiation modifications. In Oklahoma, like many other states, had a deal to create our own accountability standards. And our rated system for schools is part of that deal. So now let's look at Oklahoma. So we believe Oklahoma is entrenched in this testing culture. The number of tests that are required for students each year, the high-stakes nature of that testing, and the ADF letter grades given to school really are very detrimental to our children's education. For a student who is a kindergartner, from the time they're in kindergarten to the time they graduate from high school, they take no more than 28 state-mandated tests. And as many as 46, depending on what courses they enroll in high school. Many of those, that's in addition to the tests that are given at the local levels. Something like that benchmark test, my students in Oklahoma City take 4 times a year. So they're just tested. They feel like they come to school for testing. And of course, we have the English streets where we're reading along. Some of the high-stakes natures, this is one of the biggest ones, because this one says, starting this year's regular third graders, if they do not pass their test, then they will not go on to 4th grade. Now, there are some exemptions to that. If they are English language learners, then they have 2 years to become proficient for taking this exam. Or the student has an individualized education. They also have some exemptions. But unfortunately, regardless of those exemptions, the Oklahoma Policy Institute is estimating we'll have close to 5,000 third graders this year that will be retained in 3rd grade because they're not able to pass that proficiency exam. Then is a slide that we found that I think is really, really powerful, because when our legislature sat down to write our law for AED, and for our rating sufficiency plan that we have in Oklahoma, they base it on Florida. We do a lot of things based on Florida. And what we found out was, in Oklahoma, this is our funding level for reading sufficiency. For students who are struggling K-3 for reading, for the past few years, in fact, this year, 11, 12, and 13, we had no money at all. It was zero out. There were no dollars coming into school districts for support of those readers. This year, we got about $7 million. If we had a program equivalent to Florida's system, look at the money we would need to spend. $30 million. And we know that that's not happening. So that's what it would take to have a program similar to Florida's, but of course we're not willing to fund that, and that's a problem. Then we have other class-based testing. Of course, at 8-graders, they'll pass the 8-grade test, and they will get their driver's license when they turn 16. Then you have the end of instruction test, where last year's graduating seniors were the first class to, they must have passed 4 of 7 end of instruction tests to graduate from high school. So now let's look at the impact on testing that's having on students and teachers in schools. Now these are statistics taken from City Public Schools. Testing has a big impact on students. During the testing month of April, which is pretty much the entire month, for those who are familiar with testing, it takes up almost the entire month of April. In Oklahoma City, there were rules for discipline, officer rules. You can see what happens. Now, granted, March normally is for 2 weeks, but still we have that huge jump during testing time. It shows the psychological impact on students. We also talk a lot about quality instructional time. When I think about 20 years ago when I started teaching, long before my child left behind, I would teach every day and know that my kids were going to get the instruction that I knew I designed was best for them. Now I'm left looking at what days do I have that are not taken up by testing. This traditional school year is 173 days, but students are tested in March and April. It takes about 30 days in late March and all of April to prepare and conduct the full series of tests. In addition, we've got 4 benchmark tests over there that are really going to take 2 days each to get, so that's 8 more days on for instruction. Then if we subtract the other 10 days for absences that are there, that's an average for most students, 8 for teachers, around 9% overlap. That only gives 125 days for instruction. Where 100 days to prepare for the test, the entire month of May comes after the test. So 100 days of instruction is what we're leaving our kids in this culture. Then we have the test results. The test results are given in April and May, and then we don't get scores back into the schools typically until September and October. Compare this timeline to other tests that are given across the country. If you just think about tests that we know we're all familiar with, the ACT exam takes 3 hours to take, and typically we get results back in 3 to 8 days. Then the bar exam takes 2 days to take, and only takes 7 weeks to get the results back. So to test so early in the year to say we're getting our scores back, we can use them for meaningful planning, we know that that's just not happening. Then the impact on teachers. We have teachers leaving the profession in droves. And granted, this testing is only part of the problem, and this has been a systemic problem for years. But the U.S. statistics are telling a pretty good story. A third of the teachers leave within the first 3 years. And after 5 years, only half are still in the profession. So when I look at teachers, if you go to research that says after it takes 7 years to become proficient at being an excellent teacher. So we're really getting the folks to that point before they drop out of this profession. With going to school, we know that every school member now receives a grade, A through F. The criteria for the grade level has changed every year it's been given. They can possibly compare a school's progress or lack of progress. Changes in this year's formula made Oklahoma City from having 1 F school to 39. In total, the school is moving from 8 F schools to 36. So So I know my school, after high school, 2 years ago was a B school, this year we're a P school, just because of the changes in the formulas. So overall, how are grades calculated? Well, we're based on a combination of 4 criteria: student achievement scores, annual learning gains, the improvement of the bottom 25% of students, and then we have a whole school improvement that includes performance gains. So what you know is that understanding that the bottom 25, the students in the lowest performing level, will count in all of those areas. So they're counted more than one time. So of course, schools who have lower poverty students are going to have much lower scores. In fact, a study done by the researchers that was released this summer found that there were significant flaws in Oklahoma's data system. And here are some of their key findings. First, when they average schools, raw reading, math, and science scores, they found that only 3 to 6 correct answers separated A schools from F schools. 3 responses on the test. Second, a single letter rating doesn't capture the whole picture of the school. For example, the researchers found that none of the 7 highest performing schools in mathematics in the entire state were A schools. Also, districts across the state pointed to schools that made significant gains in test scores in math, reading, and science, yet they saw their scores drop. And we saw that story many times in the Oklahoma City area. Schools have worked very, very hard to help their students make gains, and those gains happened, and their school remained dropped. And then third, the researchers found that poor students and minority students at some D&S schools actually outperformed the poor and minority students at some A schools. So that's very nice. This was probably most important to the homeowners in the room. A Florida study has found, since Florida's been doing this long before us, that housing values are affected by A&M. In fact, the difference between an A and an F grade was $10,000 in value. It's very constant with other things, and we want constants with quality, neighborhood, and property attributes in the homes. So that means a lot if you're a homeowner. You definitely want to have your home continue to have the value and hold that value, or increase that value. So here's our plan. This is what Royce put out last fall. We begin by training people like me to go around the state. There's 50 of us that are going to go around and give these presentations. We're going to do individual meetings and hearing from people throughout Oklahoma to hear their ideas. We're going to do presentations now through the end of March. And from what we get from you all tonight and other presentations across the state, we're actually going to create the alternative grading system that we are going to propose at our accountability session. In April, we're going to actually meet with the candidates who are running for state superintendent, and we're going to ask them, we're going to invite them to come to this accountability session in June. We're going to present this alternative grading plan. We're going to ask them, are you willing to listen to this and put this in place to make a difference for our students, to make a change for the better? So we encourage all of you tonight to look out your report. This has a place where you look at 3 things that we think make a great school. Again, we're collecting these from across the state. We're taking this data, we're going to combine it, and decoding it, and organizing it so that we can capture as best we can what we believe Oklahoma's feel and make grades of the schools. And if you will turn this into us tonight, we'll be able to add that and add it to the other data that we've already collected from our previous presentations. So what questions do you have for me? I know we're going to follow up with our panel in just a minute, but maybe you have questions about the presentation that I might answer. Good question. Why do we go back over that? Anyone have an answer to that? Part of that, yeah. They're very political. I'll give you this as a Heather Sparks opinion, and I'm pretty sure I can back that from other things I've read, but ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, thank you, is a national organization that writes legislation. You can actually go to their website and see, and they write legislation that states can pick up, and that's what our legislators do. They look and see, oh, what do I do in Florida? That's one more, we're just to get that, just like what we're on, and we'll make it our own. And there's quality laws that we pay attention to what's coming up this year. You'll see other additional ballot bills coming this way. So this is a kind of originated bill. And there's a tendency to follow Florida, for sure. Florida, just so you all know, Florida tends to start something and then not like it, but we never seem to pay attention. But I don't really like it, they got rid of it, we keep doing it. So we need to help our legislators understand this isn't something we want. We decided to focus on data. That's a great question. The question is, are you focusing on anything else in education? We decided as a list that we really felt like data was having the greatest impact on the schools in our community, and that was where parents wanted to see a change. It never feels good to be a parent of a child attending a high school, especially when they know every day that they drop their child off, what fantastic teachers they have, what fantastic systems, all the work they see their child doing, the progress they see in their child, and then the child gets labeled as attending family school. So we decided that this would be our priority, but again, we're going to take this to our accountability session in June when we meet with the candidates. We secured the free center at OCU. So we have over 2,000 seats. We encourage you to come out June 8th and listen to those candidates come, because we're going to ask them pointedly questions about data and other issues that come up in these sessions. Yeah, we originally organized, I was involved in the very first year, so I don't know initially who started it, but we organized through several community foundation grants as our funding source. We also, now we're starting this campaign, NEA has a grant to help us run this AF because we really feel like this is what we're hearing from the community. I know I got involved because I was working with communities that wanted to improve, and we were finding that people in the neighborhood didn't want to send their children to that school, and we wanted to help solve that problem. So we started doing listening campaigns, talking with those families, saying, what is it about this particular school that you're not happy with? What would help you decide to send your child to that school? And so from that grew, and my participation, I saw what an amazing difference that made, seeing those families really buy into their school and really make a difference by contributing. So, so the children from the Community Foundation, I did that for you. I know they're part of the Community Foundation.
I just thought it was doors. That was more in California.
In June, well, for right now, we decided to prioritize. At each meeting monthly, the Education Action Team meets monthly. And our priority obviously is this is our campaign, this is where we want to put our energy, because we know the impacts that Sandy Brooklyn has. We want to make sure whoever runs for office is listening to us and to the community, because we try really hard to get those voices raised. So often we're ignored, and we want them to be a part of that. And so I think that's where our priorities are right now. And I know we have been part of many other issues. Actions from local school actions, for example, getting a crossing guard at a school because there was a safety issue. If there's local actions that we can help with, we do that as well. So it really depends on the issues happening in the schools that we're working with. And because Oklahoma City is such a large metropolitan area, we have members from across the community that are on that education action team. And in any neighborhood, we have 20 to 25 people who show up and contribute to what's going on. Well, and I think eventually we go with what people say, so what we're going to encourage you to attend meetings and share your concerns, because everyone deserves a voice and deserves to have their concern about that, for sure. Okay, so if you think about it, if you think will help, then I'm going to encourage you to put your ideas down on the other room, because again, we're going to collect these are things we're going to use, so that we have a lot of data when we meet with these candidates. Again, we're going to bring meetings with them in April, so that they understand basically our agenda, what we're doing. We're not being secretive about this, we're very clear about, we believe the AIX system is flawed, we believe research shows that. And we believe we can do a better job. I know as a parent, I know what I want in my child's school, and I'm not really too concerned about the test scores. That's not number one. I want to know that yes, my child is a quality teacher, but they have a well-stocked library, they have a counselor, they have things that they need to really make a difference for public education, and that can't happen if we're focusing on the A-level grading. That's not going to happen here.
So, what would you change about how you assess schools today?
I have lots of ideas, but I don't want to give anybody my ideas. I would rather hear from you all, because what I've been amazed as we've done these presentations is everybody has great ideas, and I think if we bring this together, there's a lot of commonality. We're already seeing as we put them into the database, there's lots of topics that we're picking up again and again and again. Think about, for me, I encourage you to think about what would be the ultimate public school for every child. What would that look like? And how would a check system, you would say that they have the things that would make it successful? For me, I have an idea about what that would be. I have a vision for that, but that may not be the same vision you will share. So think about what you would want for your students, and what would really speak to say to you, when your child goes to kindergarten, what do you want in the classroom? What do you want the school to look like? And really make that become under your paper today. We probably have time for another comment. We'll probably need to get to our panels. We've got a panel coming in around this other thing. Anybody else? Again, thank you for letting me share this presentation with you. This is available on our website, so you can download this. If you want us to share this presentation with the community group in your area, maybe your church group or anything that you want to share, whatever you would like us to share, we'd be happy to come do that for you. You can like us on Facebook and see our place there as well. So thank you again, appreciate it.
Well, the logistics here as we bring up the screen and take the floor and introduce various members of the panel. Now, we already have some great questions to the audience. We'll have four after the panel. Each one will have a very brief presentation. If you've got questions on cards or work with that, just generic questions from the audience, that's fine too. So once we go to our next group of panelists, we'll get back to your comments. We still wish you help, but we want to have videos and trying to get back. But we really appreciate you coming out from this very important wide-ranging topic. And we still have all the local educators platform.
She has two sons, a 6th grader and a 2nd grader. And also, Matt Holtzen is a social studies teacher at Enid High School and a former Oklahoma State Teacher of the Year finalist. He's also vice president of the Enid Education Association. And Kim Blankenship is a parent and volunteer. She's the executive director of the YWCA. She has a son who's a 3rd grader and a daughter who's a 1st grader. And Heather's down here too, so she can weigh in after we get through the presentations. And we'll just go in order. And Doug, we'll start with you, sir.
All right. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and I'm excited to be able to share my story with you as to how testing impacts our schools and how we're being asked to do that with less and less resources and funding. So I really appreciate you guys coming out tonight. The first thing that I did was I asked my counselor if she would possibly look at totaling up the number of hours that we test. I didn't really want to know that because I was afraid of what the answer was going to be, but I want to share with you the number of hours that we test. Total, in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in the areas of math, reading, science, social studies, and geography, and writing, we spend 27 hours with OCCT testing. Students are in a testing session. They're not getting direct instruction from their teachers. They're in a testing session. During that 27-hour shutdown, we have other students who are not able to go to each class that they have because we have to shut down the whole school because of the limitations with computers, online testing, making sure that we're creating an environment for students to be able to test successfully. 6th graders spend 21 hours in one classroom while another grade is testing. That's 21 hours of class time in which there's instruction going on, but they can't move from one class to the other. They can't receive direct instruction from all of their teachers. 7th grade, they spend 18 hours in one classroom while another grade is testing. And 8th grade spends 15 hours. We spend 5 hours of instructional time teaching students how to take a test. We spend that time teaching them the online tools that they need in order to be able to navigate the online testing system. It's, 5 hours that students have missed instruction just to teach them how to navigate the system. ABC book testing. Obviously, teachers, it's very important that we teach students to be accountable. We're certainly not wanting to not hold our students accountable or ourselves. We spend over 60 hours doing formal benchmarking to determine where our students are along the way throughout their school experience. We have teachers in the classroom who believe in every student every time. They know how their students are performing. They know where they're at. And certainly accountability is important, and we need to be able to benchmark their progress. But 60 hours of benchmarking is excessive. We did 3 hours of stress testing. That was a new thing for us this year. 3 hours of stress testing that was mandated by the Oklahoma State Department of Education. As you saw in the presentation, testing companies are making millions and millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and our students were asked to be the guinea pigs of a stress test. The testing companies wanted to know whether or not Oklahoma had the infrastructure to maintain all the online testing that was taking place. Again, we had to disrupt class. We had to pull students out of their regular instructional classes. It was stressful. It truly was stressful. They called it a stress test for a reason. And ELL students, when we have special education students and ELL students, we have to provide a special testing session for them. So they don't necessarily test with everybody in the regular classroom. They are pulled out so that they can be successful and receive the modifications they need in order for that to happen. There are 47 different groups for testing. 47 different groups. Each group has to have one certified teacher who's the test administrator and a monitor. Pulling our resources for all of this testing certainly impacts what we do in the classroom. So when we added all of that up, we're looking at 13 instructional days for testing and 92 hours of missed instruction. Now I will tell you, whenever I have students who have missed a lot of school, have excessive absences, and I call them in, and if I was to tell them that they missed 13 days of school and 92 hours of instruction, we would be educationally negligent, parents would be educationally negligent. 92 hours of missed instruction just for the act of testing. Puts a lot of stress on our students, and that stress, obviously, teachers try to calm students down, but you can understand when teachers are being held to a certain accountability standard. You looked at the A through F report card data. It's inevitable that teachers are going to feel stressed, but we do our very best to calm students down and let them know that all we want them to do is show what they know. and that, we've prepared them for that process. But it does cause a lot of student stress, and a lot of that stress comes from our students who are excelling academically. They put so much pressure on themselves to do well, and it causes them a lot of stress. Teacher stress. We talked about the teacher turnover rate. It certainly has an impact. It seems like it's less about the learning, which is why we all got into the business, to teach students and watch them grow and see them learn. And we've gotten more into the assessment business. We're increasing rigor. We're putting our focus on getting students prepared for college and career readiness. We're working very hard on that. That is always our ultimate goal. But with the added accountability, the stress put on all of us for testing, we're being asked to do that, but yet we're spending less per student for funding, but we're raising the stakes. And so it just doesn't all make sense. For me, I think the saddest thing is I see the stress in the students. I'll share a personal experience as a parent. As they mentioned, I have a third grader. About 2 weeks ago, didn't want to go to school, started crying. We thought, okay, is she being bullied? Is someone bothering her? Come to find out, she's stressed about the third grade reading test because it has been communicated to her that if she doesn't pass that test, that she can be retained in the third grade. Last week, we put her on anti-anxiety medicine. And it's not stress that the teacher's putting on her. It's just the stress that she puts on herself because she wants to be successful. We're going to spend, and I know probably all of our schools are doing this, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we actually had pep assemblies to show school spirit, to cheer on our teams. Now our pep assembly, we're having academic pep assemblies. I mean, it's almost ridiculous that we have to have a pep assembly to, bring kids up about and try to release some of that stress that they have about testing, but that's what we're doing. We're trying to encourage them to do their best. We're having to put out that extra effort to get them, for one, to relax. We want them to relax and we don't want them to be stressed. But now we're having academic pep assemblies instead of, spirit pep assemblies because we've got to get kids geared up and ready for that. So lots of different issues there with what is going on in our schools. Thank you very much.
We'll have Jamie Jarnagin. Jamie?
Hi, I'm Jamie. I teach third grade at Prairie View Elementary, and I am also the third grade chairperson. I've taught in Enid Public Schools. This is my 12th year, and I've taught 15 years. And I love to teach. I mean, that's what I do. I'm a teacher, and I just see part of the reason I'm up here is because of the third grade retention law. And I've seen such a change in what is happening in third grade. And Doug's story made me want to cry because that's my classroom. That's my kids. And when I get choked up and I say, they're stressed. And it's not the teachers. We are trying every day to ease their nerves, to get them ready, to make them feel secure. And they're so worried because Oklahoma passed a law. And if they don't pass that test, they're not going to fourth grade. And they know it. Not that we've told them. It's out there. They're smart kids. They know. And I feel like every day I live a moral dilemma of I want to get my kids ready. I want to prepare them. I do the practice test. And I do things so that they know what's coming because I don't want them to be scared, and I don't want them to be unprepared. But yet I know in my heart as a teacher, is that the best thing for third graders? No. Am I doing what I know is best to be a teacher? No. But I have to get them ready to take that test, which has become a huge deal this year because of this law that they've passed. Those are the steps I have to take. And I see it not just in myself because of being the third grade chair. I talk to all the third grade teachers. They all feel it. I mean, we all worry about the test in April, and we all worry about the OCC test. But instead of start going home and literally dreaming about it, usually about March and April, you do. This started months ago for all of them. And they call, and at our meetings, we talk about how are we going to get them past this? I mean, do we want our kids on grade level? Of course we do. I would love if all my third graders were right on grade level. But as a teacher, I know that my students are not all carbon copies. They're not little robots. They aren't all the same. Every child has strengths. Every child has weaknesses. And to expect them to all be at a certain spot on a certain number on one day and pass, I think it's crime. I think it's wrong. But that's what we have this year, and that's the challenge that the third grade teachers are facing, and all the teachers, all of them that are doing testing grades. I know there are some exemptions out there, but I know I have kids in my class that won't qualify for those. I know that it was mentioned, kids that are on an IEP might get passed on, but that's not a for sure thing. There is a lot of regulations with that. And with reading sufficiency. As third grade teachers, we're trying. There's a huge portfolio that we can do and things we can do to help children. It amounts to more testing and more gathering more paperwork for our kids. But we're going to do it because it might help one child. I guess that's my main part. I hate it that this is the way it is. I know it is. This is what we've been dealt this year. I know it's my job to give my kids every opportunity to grow, and to me, that's what we should be graded on. I want to see that My Little Pumpkin in September started here and in May ended here. I want to see the growth through the year, and I think as teachers, that's what we all look for. We realize that's not what the state of Oklahoma is looking at. They're looking at one test on one day. But that's what I want to see. I want to see my kids grow from point A to point B. And for one kiddo, that might be this much growth, but that's the best he can do. For another student, it's going to be different. But that's what children are, and that's as educators what we want to focus on. And I don't want to be held... I want to be held accountable in what I do, but I don't feel like it's right to be held accountable by the state of Oklahoma on one day, on one test. I want to be held accountable by my students, by my parents, by my administrators. My district should be the one that is telling me that my students, they should see my kids' growth, and they should be the ones to decide that these kids are making progress. Not one test on one day.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Up next, thank you very much. Up next, Matt Holtzen from Enid High School. Matt?
Well, good evening. I want to thank you for taking the time to come out on a busy Tuesday for this important panel discussion. Before this evening, I was sitting down and I was thinking, let me look back at my calendar, and I want to think about how much time I personally in my classroom spend on teaching. And I was thinking, with all the various benchmarks that we do just within my class, that's 2 weeks of time. For 2 weeks in every class, we're testing throughout the entire year. Then there's another 2 weeks right before the testing window opens that we are reviewing and preparing for the test, in addition to working on those skills for test taking and getting kids ready to see what a test is going to look like. And then I'm thinking of the 4-week window we have for the testing period for the 9 through 12 grades. And I'm thinking there is no learning taking place in those 4 weeks. There's absolutely no learning taking place because my kids are being pulled from my class every other day, every day, to go take another test for a different subject. I'm getting pulled out of class because I need to go monitor or administer a test. I was just talking with one of my U.S. history classes today, or my government class, that we're going to be missing class on a day because I have to go and administer a test. And in fact, we'll be missing the day before that as well because I have to administer an English test. And these are kids that are preparing for an AP test themselves, and they're thinking, well, why do we have to do that? And I don't have a good answer for them. And I added it up, and 20% of the time I spend with my students is not learning time. 20% of it is measuring how well they're going to do on one test. One test that does not dictate one single thing about how they will perform as an individual, as a citizen, as a person. But yet we are being told that this is what we must do. I'm thinking of some of the kids that I've had over the years. I had a student who just arrived from Mexico right at the beginning of school. He spoke no English. I taught him U.S. history through an interpreter for the entire year, really. And it was from August until about October that all I could really get was a yes, yes. But then by about November and December, I got sentences. I got academic vocabulary. I got an understanding of concepts. By February and March, we were communicating in English, understanding one another, and yet he turns around in April, takes a test, shows that he is tested as unsatisfactory, and on one piece of paper from one test, it shows he has not grown as a learner. That is not true. He has made so much progress, but that is not reflected in anything we do in the year. That is wrong. I think, what could I do with 20% more learning time? I could probably go to the lab. I would love to follow up on some of the questions the kids have, but in the back of my mind, and I find myself hating myself for doing this, I think, we can't do that. That's not on the test. We don't have time. We got to get to what's on the test because that test is so important. That test is not that important. That test you've been told is important, but it really isn't. I think, let's go to the lab, but I can't go to the lab because our district has been so great at getting us the technology in the last few years with our great upgrades that we've had. But sadly, the technology is being used for let's go to the lab. You've got a question, let's go research it. Well, there's a benchmark being given. It's an Algebra 2 benchmark, so it's going to be 2 days. Well, that's out. And that's not right as well. That's not the purpose of why I teach. That's not why I got into this profession. And that's not why I show up every day to work with these kids. And I am glad to see that so many people have shown up that have expressed an interest in this because I think only together can we work together. Will our voice be heard and will we finally make some type of change that impacts the lives of our students? So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Matt. And finally, Kim Blankenship with the YWCA. Kim?
Wow. First of all, I would just like to thank these wonderful teachers and educators. I mean, this is so inspiring. I mean, it's just incredible. And thank you for your passion and your love for our kids. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I will contradict you, though, because I look out here and I see all these empty seats. And I want to praise you for priority, because I know how difficult it is as a mom. I have a sick kid at home, missed 5 days of school so far. I have a little girl that's at dance. I'm asking my husband to go do the errands and run and watch the kids so that I can be here. And so I know that you guys made it a priority to be here tonight, and I just want to thank you for that. But I do want to ask if you're an educator, would you raise your hand? Wow. Look at that. I mean, look around how many teachers that care about our kids. And I'm speaking as a parent. If you're a parent, would you raise your hand? I don't know. It's probably 50-50, And so as a parent and caring so much about my child's education, I wish that we would have a few more people here tonight. So that's why I'm begging you and pleading you as a what you've learned tonight. As Frank said, I have a third grader and a first grader. The school is great, magnificent. I love it. My kids have just excelled and done great at this school. But one thing I have a beef about is that there's 28 kiddos in each class. And even though the teachers are the best of the best, it's not fair, not only to the kid, but it's not fair to the teacher. It's not fair to the teacher who's trying to teach 28 little kids, not only the pressures of the testing, but just being the mommy, being the counselor, making sure they're fed. I mean, there's so many things that go into being the teacher. And I know this because I taught for 14 years. I'm a statistic. I got out of it before all of this pressure. So I can't even imagine what it's like. So one of my main things is, please get interested in the state level. Get political if you have to. But don't just care about what's happening in the classroom. I know Patrick Anderson's here, so I'm sorry, but I thank you so much. Pester your senator. Pester your representative. We are the voice for these teachers in this district. And if anything's going to change, we as parents have. And I encourage you so much. On March 31st, they're going to have an education rally at the state capitol. Please put it on your calendar. Please go. Mr. Patrick, those legislatures, so they know we mean business and that we need change. Also, I'm hoping that we get the plaque or come to the meetings because we can be a voice. The other thing about the testing, my third grader is going to be in this testing, and even though I know in the bottom of my heart he is qualified, capable, is going to pass, what if he just wakes up because he's ornery and he's stubborn and he's a boy? What if he just says, I don't want to try on this test today? My concern, what Jamie's saying, is that sure, there's a portfolio that they can go and look back at, but if they're not on, and correct me if this is not correct, what you were saying, if the portfolio does not indicate that they're on grade level in every single 30-piece document you said, 40, then they don't get to go on. So my child, who, of course, I'm the parent, so I think he should go on, I have no voice. He's going to stay in third grade. Then here comes my little first grader. My little first grader is going to be a third grader, and half her class is going to be fifth grade students who should be in fifth grade but aren't in fifth grade. And it's going to happen. It's a reality. So I just beg you as a parent, please get involved. Thank you.
Now, I think we've all decided at the end of the meeting, we'll all line up. Patrick Anderson is in that corner of the room, and we'll pester him one at a time, okay? He's smiling. He's up for it. No, all kidding aside, Fred Morgan, who's a former Senate colleague of Patrick, spoke to Rotary on Monday. He's now with the Oklahoma State Chamber of Commerce. And he made the point, he said, you wouldn't believe how often we don't hear from people. He said 3 or 4 folks represent a tsunami. So I know there are a lot of individuals out here who feel strongly with the issues we're talking about. Your legislators do need to hear from you and appreciate it because they don't want to operate in a vacuum. They want feedback from their constituents. We're going to go to questions, and this is not going to be like a game show. You guys don't have to hit a buzzer. So I'll ask the question. I don't have names on all of these questions. And then whoever wants to weigh in first, and we don't have to just have one educator answer. If a couple of you want to weigh in, I'll just leave it to your good graces. We will try to do kind of one question per person and then roll through. And I think we're going to take about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will go to Shawn Hime for some concluding comments. First question I've got is from a good friend of mine, Ty Tompkins. Ty's just relaxing back here. He is relaxed, but he has a question. Question with the panel, please.
And the best way to educate them. I mean, is there some great panel that's there every day, nationwide funded, that goes, how do our kids learn better, and what new things can we bring in to make them learn?
Well, I think back to my experience, and I know how my kids are doing. You can ask me on any day where if your child is a student in my class, how that child is progressing. Teachers know. Teachers are constantly assessing. I do not need to depend upon one test administered in April or May. I know through best practice, I know through work with my district, through curriculum building, curriculum writing, constantly assessing, not just giving a test. You know, we do tests in my class, but we do a variety of assessments. We do writing, and I am able to measure their growth throughout the year because I am constantly checking for that. What we have, we all teach with a set of standards. You know, we use those standards, but those standards are not the only thing. We're teaching a curriculum that is based upon those standards, that is a guide for us to us where we need to get to. But, it falls back to the teacher. We're all professionals. We have been working at this, and we know, and we can measure, and we can remediate. We can help to fill those gaps on where they need to be filled.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any other comments from the panel on that question? All right, the next question, do you see a need for, we're talking about the excessive testing, but do you see a need for some type of assessment, and what do you see as an appropriate assessment of our students in the classroom?
Okay. I do think we need assessments. I think that students need to be held accountable. I'm okay with teachers being accountable. The problem as an educator, I have a problem with one test on one day, or even two tests. It's one little cluster in April. It doesn't show growth. And I think that's the biggest problem with this system we have, is that it doesn't show where a child starts and where they're ending up. It doesn't show, the example with the little ELL boy that couldn't speak any English, and by the end of the year, he could have a conversation in a sentence. So, to me, that's where assessment I'm off. Here I go. Okay. Also, I think that it doesn't have to be a huge standardized test. It can be, I can assess a kid on any given day with one or two questions and know if they understand the concept we're doing without it being this huge standardized test. So I think, does that answer the question?
I think it does.
Okay.
Thank you. Another question, I don't know if this was Mary's question or Mark's, but what about the worth of using some of the books from the past? This is from a former fourth grade teacher, in terms of teaching reading, and her experiencing teaching fourth grade back in the day. The kids could read, even though the school was in a very... Is there any worth of reaching back to some of our teaching tools from the... And Mary wants to add something to that. Mary?
The state committee to read time. I read an article about textbooks were dumbed down, and I sort of was amazed. I was not the world's best teacher. I was right out of college. I was not as patient as I was after I had 4 children. I only had one education course in college. I majored in English. And they could read when they got there. And we were in a very poor school district, huge government apartments nearby. But they could read. And I don't know, but maybe the textbooks had something to do with it. Now, I know phonics did, and I think we've gone back to really looking closer at phonics. But I don't know what else was in the textbook. I don't even remember the names of them. But I just think it's something we might look at.
On the curriculum, I think it's always good to look at a variety of curriculum, and I think teachers pull from a lot of places. On partly while as an early childhood educator, why one of the reasons I see that some children are struggling to read, I think there's a variety of reasons. I think Kim hit on one of them. I think part of it's classroom size. 29 first graders is too many. 29 first graders, teaching them to read is too many, and that's because of funding. That's not our district. That's that we have not been funded. We've not had an increase in funding since 2008. Am I right, Amber? 2008? Okay, someone who knows more. Okay. But we haven't had an increase in funding, so our class sizes have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And to teach children to read in those early childhood grades, it's too many. I think that's one problem. I think part of it is the variety in home life. We have kids that come to us that And I know you said you were in a low-income area, and it does make it harder. It's harder a lot of times when you have kids that come to school with problems. You know, they're not worried about reading. They're worried about if they ate breakfast, if they have clothes to wear that day, if their heat was on that night. I think those are some of the issues that are a little bit broader than just the school that affects those children.
Another question from the audience. How are teachers evaluated for their effectiveness at this point in time? Looks like a Doug question.
All right. Teachers are evaluated using TLE, which is our observation process, and it's based on best practices, best teaching practices that are research-based. Teachers are held accountable. We go in and do walkthroughs. We observe. We look to make sure that their students are engaged, that they're actively learning. We look at classroom management, making sure that the classroom is manageable so that students have an environment in which they can learn. We look at the way teachers assess in the classroom. We want to make sure that, you know, just as everybody has talked about, these teachers know where their students are. They're assessing them daily. They're assessing them, you know, in class. So at the end of the class period, the teachers know where the students are and the things that they've mastered and the things that need to be retaught. So we're definitely observing that process and evaluating them and making sure that we're seeing best practices in the classroom.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to third grade questions here, and probably, Janine, that. How do third grade teachers help their students prepare? Another separate question, since RSA has attendance changed among third graders? Are they absent more as a result of the testing?
In my classroom and in my building, I've not seen an attendance issue. I wonder when it gets closer, if I will. I've seen stress on children that I've never seen before, and I worry that will, I've stopped a child during a benchmark, which, you know, I know for the real one, I can't do that, but I'm not going to let a child sit there and be in tears because they're stuck on a problem, you know. So I've made some adjustments, and I'm hoping that has alleviated my kids' stress and that I won't see any absenteeism because of it. The first one was, how do we prepare?
Yes.
I think most of the teachers in the district, we do benchmarks, but we do little practice things. At the beginning of the year, it's not as frequent. I will say it's almost March. It's going to be a daily thing probably from now until April, where it's not a huge amount of your time, but it does take up your teaching time. It's 10 minutes of let's review this skill, or it's 20 minutes here, let's go over figurative language again because we know it's going to be on there. I know these are skills they need to learn. It's just that the way that we are sort of having to do it is geared a little bit more towards the test. It is. And I heard someone say they practice testing skills. We do that because I don't want them to be unprepared. I don't want them, we practice, look for, cross out the one that you know is a bad answer, use your skills to, find the best one. We read through the story, we underline, and these are all good skills. They're all good learning skills, but they're geared towards getting them past it. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes. Well, and in third grade, supposedly next year it's also going to be computerized. This year we're still pencil paper, which I'm sorry, I like, because those are skills I teach my kids. Read through the story, find the main idea, circle it, underline it. Next year we'll be on the computer, so that will be a whole new set of things that I will have. Yes, my kids are computer literate, but they've not done testing on a computer, so that's a whole new set of hours we will spend learning how to do that.
All right, thank you very much. And this may be one that, Heather, you want to weigh in on also. So if there are faults in the given system, if you were to redesign the current A to F grading system, what pieces would you keep from the current model? Are there some things being done that are worthy of being kept in place?
I'll talk about a little bit of that. I think that obviously parts of the A through F that we need to keep in place is that we are, as we've all talked about, is that we are identifying growth, and we're identifying those students who aren't having success and adjusting instruction for those students. And I think that is, one of the most valuable things that can come from that is that we look at those students who are struggling and we identify ways in which we can help them be successful. That is definitely something, for on A through F that is valuable information for us. And basically, one of the things we want to know at the end of the year, have students learned and is there growth? And that is something that A through F does provide.
And Heather, with some of your experience so far in going out at various meetings, any feedback coming back that there are elements of it that should be kept?
Yeah, I think what we hear from parents oftentimes are those bonus points. They like to hear from what pieces in that they appreciate, that schools are getting credit for the extra things they do, but they see there are other things that are not being counted that they very much value as parents, and that's what they are telling us about, that they would like to see, and we'll be happy to share those with them.
Okay. And let me see, Katie, you had a question here. You want to ask that for us? We didn't have names on all of these. I think that's your card there at the very bottom. Okay, Katie, your question?
Okay, how do you think standards-based grading and mastering skills versus just being proficient on a test could change education? Do you think it might be a good thing to go towards standards-based grading and mastery of skills versus just one test during one day?
When I give my kids their report card, okay, it's going to come out in March. They'll have reading, A, math, A, science, B. That's it. That's what the parents see, okay? With standards-based grading, it has the specific standard of each that we're looking for in each area, and whether that child has met that standard or whether they're still working on that standard. So to me, I get and this is as a parent, not even as a teacher, I will get a much better view of what my child really knows instead of, oh, whoopee, they got an A in reading. But what do they know? I mean, do they know this, this, and this? And it also, as a teacher, you can go through and say, oh, well, they've met this, this, and this, but, oh, we're still lacking in this one area. I may need to pull a small group together because I've got 5 kids and they don't all have this, and we're going to go over this again. So to me, that's the benefit I see out of it as a parent and as a teacher.
Question here, just in terms, you talked about how much time is being spent on testing in the schools. Would there be any worth, and I think the question here is why not centralize the testing side to just 1 or 2 certified teachers and monitors who would do nothing but the kids would be funneled into a centralized test or testing side? Doug, is that feasible?
You bet. That is not feasible. The state lets us know, and the testing company lets us know as far as our parameters on our testing environment. We have to have so many administrators and monitors to students. And the thought of pulling, busing students and taking them to one big warehouse and having them take an online test, they're not in their testing environment. And, and that's the psychology of testing, I guess, that now that we have to look at. When we look at the whole child, we also have to look at, okay, what is the environment in which they're going to be most successful? If we warehouse them in this big room with all these computers, are we meeting their needs? Are they feeling comfortable in that environment? And so that's even something that we have to look at. Today, all the teachers that are testing tomorrow, we have the writing test tomorrow, all of our teachers had to pull every single thing off of their walls so that students can use that as a reference point for anything that they were going to write about. So, when we talk about environment and all of the rules and regulations regarding testing, that's another disruption, pulling everything off the wall. And then when the students go in tomorrow, that testing environment isn't going to look like their classroom because everything's either going to be covered with butcher paper or have been taken down. So lots of regulations on testing administration.
Okay, a question here from Cameron Kaiser. One of the fill out a form and exempt their child from taking end-of-the-year tests. Is that actually an option?
I think I'll pass that question on to Melanie Howe, our assistant superintendent. She can answer that question for us. Sorry to put you on the spot, Mrs. Howe.
And where is she? Oh, there she goes.
Schools do not encourage opt-out. Parents can do whatever they choose to do. As a required to test 95% of our students.
Students, then we are penalized for that as well.
School dips below 90% of their students tested, they'll receive an automatic F on their report card.
And we dialogue with the members of the this evening. We were trying to get everybody out of here by 7:30 tonight. I'd like to turn it over to our superintendent of the Enid.
Before I start, Senator Anderson made a special trip tonight from the state capitol. He's been a great friend to education, worked hard for us at the Capitol, and I'd like for him to say a few words about what's going on there and his feeling about testing.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out tonight, and thank you, panel, for sharing. Kim Blankenship said, "Pester Patrick." That's a phrase that'll catch on. I'm a little concerned about that. Now, a little bit of history about Kim. She is a mother. She has been a teacher, she's been a principal, but she was my first campaign manager, so that's why she picks on me so much, I think. But I can. So thank you all for letting me speak. But meetings like this do have an impact. They are important. Please contact Patrick. Pester other legislators too, about these issues. Last year, I have two daughters. Ms. Jarnagin knows my children. My is now in 9th grade, but last year she was in this building, and it was just about a year ago, probably doing the writing test, where she was breaking down at our home, stressed out, crying about what she was going through. And she's a straight A student. And so I just know what you're going through, but we need you to tell your stories so that we can share them at the Capitol, so that we can change some of these attitudes. Last year I filed a bill to eliminate all the stuff that wasn't required with the No Child Left Behind law. The chairman of the Education Committee on the Senate side refused to give my bill a hearing. Today, on the floor of the Senate, the author was the chairman of the Education Committee that refused to hear my bill. But those things don't happen without you all sharing with your legislators and asking your friends and acquaintances and relatives to contact these issues to make sure they realize what an impact. We've got marvelous teachers. We've got wonderful students. Our education system is, in my opinion, not in trouble. But we keep on setting standards that one the legislature doesn't fund. You saw the chart out there. We ask so much of our teachers and so much of our administrators and so much of our students that we've gotten away from, unfortunately, letting teachers teach, letting kids learn so that we can check a box off to say that we've met some criteria. That isn't anything, doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't have anything to do about education. So, thank you for letting me have the time to talk.
Okay. All right, turn the spotlight off, please. I'm trying to run away from it. Thank you. My job is to talk to you a little bit about what can you do. You've heard what's going on. Senator Anderson talked about the bill that passed today. You need to take action. They listen to you a lot more than they listen to your superintendent, more than they listen to your board. They listen to community members and parents. They want to hear from you. Just real quickly, I want to give you some more information. Good news for our panelists on this end. Representative Casey in the House has a RSA bill. Some of you have heard this concept before. It would create a grade placement committee to determine retention of third graders. Now, this may seem a little too common sense for the legislature, so we're going to need your help to share it. The parent that decide if a kid goes to the fourth grade or not. Does that make sense? That passed yesterday, 12-2. Representative Casey sent me a text message after it passed. He said it's time for you to contact your legislature about the next step. The next step would be the House floor. That would be Representative Jackson, Representative Enns, and other House members. That's what I'm pulling up right here. The bill is House Bill 2625. House Bill 2625 by Hinkie and Casey. The bill that Senator Anderson was talking about is Senate Bill 1654 by Ford and Casey. And the fact that Senator Ford, which is the chairman of the Education Committee and the author of a lot of the reform that we talk about, with different words after it, the fact that he is sponsoring a bill this year to do away with all the testing except for the federally mandated testing shows he's listening. You know why he did that? Because he started attending parent meetings in his area. In Bartlesville and the Tulsa area, he started going to PLAC meetings and he's listening to the frustration in their voice. But it has to come from you. We have more information. Hopefully you've given your email address, your contact information at the door. Our plan is to build an army of advocates. You're the advocates. Our job is to give you the information, email you when these bills come up, give you the information about the bill, and let you go to work on your legislation. There are a lot of bills, pro and con. We'll send that information to you. We'll allow you to make the decision on contact. We'll send a link with phone numbers. If you that have the pens that wrote down the bill number, it's real easy to find it, okhouse.gov. okhouse.gov, click on legislators, and you can find the legislators in this area and legislators on certain committees like the Education Committee. So I think we have a call to action. If there are any more last minute questions about that, I want to make sure you understand the rally is March 31st. We want to make that about an education rally. All people interested in education. We want people at the Capitol to these key issues. Again, it's more important for you to be there, for Doug as a parent to be there and talk about this is what this law is doing to my child. Please pass common sense legislation, put it back in the hands of the parent, the teacher, and the principal, and let that local control work. Yes. Yes, Laura.
People from Enid were there last year, and I even had texted my husband and said, I feel like a fish out of water. Very uncomfortable place to go, but your voice is heard. It's a chance to be heard and to represent the teachers and say, this is what they're going through, and fight for them, because I felt like last year they were even encouraging more testing to come down the pike. And so I thoroughly encourage you to attend, what was the date? March 31st, to be at the parents to say, we are here to stand for our teachers, for our children, and for our public schools. And like I told them when I was there, all of our parents are back home working, but it is our job to go there as well and represent as parents and say, We want this to change. We want the testing to change in Oklahoma. So I just wanted to.
Thank you, Laura. And Laura went with me last year, and when they announced on the House floor that we had 30 parents in the room, there was a standing ovation for parents. They don't do that for educators. They really, really want to know what you have to say. I don't know if they do that for pharmacists or not, but they don't do it for educators. So if there's nothing else, I think it's time. One more round of applause. One more round of applause here while I'm taking the microphone. Great panel of educators. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you know me or not. You should. I am one of Enid's substitute teachers. I've been doing this about 6 years. And during this time, you cannot imagine how many little kids I've gone through most of your schools. Some of you teachers probably know me, high school, whatever I've been in. These kids need our help. I was in classroom the other day, and these kids asked me, as their substitute teacher, their friend more than anything, to come fight for them. They are tired of testing. They're tired of being labeled. Jim's all I can think of. You said your daughter put the pressure on her, it's her. It is a state. We are allowing them to bully our children into testing. That's got to stop. I have an 8th grader in this building. I have seen so many kids cry. What happened to the chapter, this young lady, actually, down here said, well, in the 50s it did. In the 50s, we had chapter tests. We had weekly tests. We had semester tests. We knew by the time, because that's my age group, when we got to that 9 weeks test, we knew what we were doing. Of course we knew how to read because we were taught. We were inundated with our little weekly 9 weeks test, but our parents cared. And the parents that are here tonight, I applaud you. I truly do, because you have no idea what these teachers go through. I come into their classroom and I pick up the little pieces, and believe you me, there's not many of them that don't know how many I have been in. These kids need our love, and they need to be educated. By all means, they are not illiterate. Even the ones that have trouble understanding, they are not. They want to be cared about, and they want to be heard. And their little voices don't seem to matter. So they look for parents, and they look for their teachers, and they look to their principal, and they look to you. And they look to our representatives, that is who they know should be taking care of them. I'm sorry to take up your time. But
thank you. Thank you. Yes, you do. Be here in the morning. When you walk out, if you say, what date was that? How do I get there? Call our office and ask. We'll be emailing you. We'll have carpooling. We'll have buses ready to roll. We'll get you that information for March 31st. Have a great evening, and hopefully your child's not texting you like mine asking where dinner is. Good night.